What's up, everyone? Back for another beer review, and today is day 3 of the 7th annual 10 Days of Pumpkin here on the channel. The beer I'm reviewing today once again comes from New Holland Brewing, and they are out of Holland, Michigan, and this is their Ichabod, the 2024 release. So this is a pumpkin ale, and on the side of the label it says brewed with real pumpkin, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It comes in at 4.5% alcohol by volume, 26 IBUs at the time of review. This can is just over 3.5 months old, and I picked this one up at Halftime Beverage via halftimebeverage.com. So in the description box, I'll post a link to the beer mail unboxing video I did that contains all the goodies that I grabbed, and I grabbed a bunch of beers, 20 in total, 5 of which I think it was 5 that were pumpkin beers, and all of them I'm reviewing during the 10 Days of Pumpkin. And this was one that I instantly threw in my cart because here in the Buffalo, New York area, and I guess the Western New York area as a whole, the only beer, and I guess beers that we get from New Holland is their Dragon's Milk and their Dragon's Milk Reserve series. We really don't get their year-round and or seasonal offerings, and I've always wanted to try this one, never picked it up, so I was glad that they had it available, and it gives me an excuse to use the hashtag proper glassware kindness, the New Holland Brewing glass. It says Filthy Pumpkin on the back. I don't know if they have a beer called Filthy Pumpkin. Never heard of it, never had it, but this was sent to me by a friend of mine and fellow beer tuber Jay over at This Guy's Thoughts. I haven't talked to Jay in a while. I watch his stuff occasionally, but hopefully he's doing well. But he sent me this glass a couple years back, and I thought it'd be perfect to use it today. It's basically a New Holland pumpkin beer glass, and we got a pumpkin beer from New Holland, so, you know, it is what it is. I'm surprised they haven't done a Dragon's Milk Reserve pumpkin offering, variant, whatever you want to call it. Maybe they have, and I just haven't been hip to it. But anyway, we're going to pour this into the hashtag proper glassware and see what we got going on here. So I'm thinking this is going to be kind of like that old school pumpkin ale where, you know, it's a lower ABV, crushable, kind of nice pumpkin beer that has, for sure, some nice, nice spice character, a little bit, some shit's at the bottom of the glass. I haven't used this in a while. I did wash it out, but you know how it goes. So in the hashtag proper glassware, it looks really nice. Has this like nice orange amber color. Looks very akin to the day 1 beer, which was Gourd Reaper from Narragansett, maybe a little bit lighter, more of like a honey orange color, a bit darker though. Good carbonation rising from the bottom of the glass. This had about a finger, but now it's a thin film of this like off-white, eggshell white head. Somewhat creamy looking, kind of dissipated. Good clarity, hold it up to light for sure. I can see the Filthy Pumpkin on the other side. I can make out my hand. But yeah, I mean, this looks really, really solid and what I kind of expect out of a pumpkin beer nowadays. One more. Sticking to the bottom. I guess I didn't wash the bottom of the glass as well as the rest of it. Anyway, let's get a nose. So I will argue one thing when it comes to pumpkin beers, and I know a lot of you have the same opinion. They're released way too early. They're released way too early for one reason and one reason only. Spices definitely fall off in beer pretty quickly too. Some of them can fall off in a month or two. So the fact that you have a spiced beer of some sort, in this case a pumpkin ale, and you're releasing them and canning them, like this one was canned towards the end of June. Well, by the time that someone like myself, and I know a lot of other people out there, start drinking pumpkin beers, which is typically September, a lot of times they're already a couple months old. And now me reviewing these middle to late October, they're 3.5, 4 months old. Some of the spices can fall off. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because in this nose right here, I get a subtle, faint kind of cinnamon nutmeg vibe. But I know if I would have drank this, say, like 2-3 weeks old, maybe a month old, it would probably be screaming. But it smells like your, prototypical pumpkin ale. Has a nice, malty kind of sensation that's more like caramel, bread, a little bit of biscuity vibe to it, maybe a touch of brown sugar, and then it has the cinnamon and nutmeg on top of it. I don't usually, with pumpkin being like real pumpkin brewed, a lot of people get upset about breweries not using real pumpkin, and I'm kind of in between. I'd like to see all the breweries use real pumpkin. I think it really does help out the body and mouthfeel of the beers. But taste-wise, you don't really miss a lot, or at least I don't, because I can probably count on 1, maybe 2 hands the amount of pumpkin beers I've had where I'm like, oh, that's distinctively actual pumpkin in there. Like it has an earthiness to it or like a vegetal kind of vibe to it. You usually don't pick up on it. At least I don't. I usually get more of the pumpkin pie spices. It's just one of those things where I'd still like to see real pumpkin used to some degree. A lot of places will just brew a subpar generic ale and then just dump spices into it, and they're like, that's our pumpkin beer. And it's like, no, it's just like a shitty ale with some pumpkin pie spices. Like, what are we doing? I don't know, I needed to rant in one of these reviews, and here we are. Not saying that New Holland did any of this. I'm just saying. Just saying. Anyway, it smells nice. Cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit more subdued than I like. Biscuity, bready, a little bit of brown sugar and caramel. Smells nice. 5.5%. I'm not expecting like a big boisterous pumpkin ale. I'm thinking this is going to be kind of in the realm of that Narragansett Day 1 beer of the 10 Days of Pumpkin this year, where Gourd Reaper, where it was more of like a more subtle, drinkable, approachable pumpkin ale. Let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. It's precisely what it is. So the spices are a little bit more prominent on the taste. Nutmeg is definitely leading the way a little bit more than cinnamon for me. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that Gourd Reaper. It's nice. Body's a little bit bigger than 4.5% would indicate. Like, I'm thinking like higher side of light, lower side of medium. This is more approaching medium. So I think the body's really nice. The mouthfeel, it's a spritzy carbonation, moderate, maybe a touch over. Smooth on the palate, not really creamy. Body's better than the mouthfeel. Both are nice, but I think the body is superior to the mouthfeel. The taste. The nose carried over to a tea with a little bit more expressive spice character. So, forefront, caramel, biscuity, little bit of brown sugar, passes through the palate. Midway through, the spices hit. It's definitely nutmeg and cinnamon in that order. I'm also getting, if I didn't know those are the only two spices in here, I would maybe say clove or ginger. Has a little bit of a sharpness to the spice character that is more in the realm of like a ginger, maybe a clove or a coriander. But just two spices in here, so it's just my terrible palate. Super easy to drink. 4.5%, you can't tell. In fact, if I was doing this blind, I would guess like 5.5%, 6% because of the body. I think it's a little bit impressive considering the low ABV of this one. This is very simplistic. It's biscuity, caramel, brown sugar, kind of caramelized sweetness from the malt with nutmeg, cinnamon, and what I perceive to be like a clove or coriander or ginger kind of vibe. It finishes pretty dry. I would say bone dry. No bitterness to speak of, but it's dry enough where this is not sweet. It's 4.5%. It's not going to be that sweet anyway. Very well balanced. If anything, this leans a little bit more dry. If you want a drier pumpkin beer where I feel like the spices kind of lead the way, but they're not overbearing, this would be one that I would definitely say grab. Not mind-blowing or anything, but it's solid. It's a solid pumpkin beer. Kind of what I expected. When you see 4.5% pumpkin ale, pumpkin, cinnamon, nutmeg, if someone handed this to me and said, hey, you want a pumpkin ale, and they gave this to me, in no way would I be disappointed. This is not the best pumpkin ale I've ever had. It's far from it. But for what I would assume is like a $10 to $12 six-pack, yeah. I shouldn't say I assume. I act like I fucking don't know that. I looked up the prices at a couple places. It's 10 to 12 bucks. Joe, who you bullshit? Nobody. I was like trying to be honest, and I almost just fibbed right there. So, But yeah, 10 to 12 bucks for a six-pack, which we'll talk about price and point and availability. Yeah, this is not amazing. I think I like the Narragansett one a little bit more because that was like more beer-esque. Like it definitely tasted like an English ESB or bitter or something in that realm. And I like the subtleties to the spices. It was a good beer. It was a better beer than this in terms of like the beer quality or like the base beer. But I think this is a better pumpkin ale. I don't know how to say that other than I'm going to give this slightly lower than the Narragansett Gourd Reaper, but it's still a nice beer. And I'd highly recommend it to anybody trying to get into pumpkin beers. I think this is a nice approachable pumpkin ale, just like the Gourd Reaper. So New Holland's Ichabod, the 2024 release, I'm going to go high 3.75, go 3.85. I think that's kind of where this one lands. I think it's nice. I think it's approachable. I think it's well done. I love that the spices aren't overbearing. It just lacks in complexity, but it is 4.5%, so you got to keep that in mind. I think it's nice, though. Price point availability, like I said, $10 to $12 for a six-pack when I looked it up. I paid $2.99 for that can on Halftime Beverage. Everything's a little bit more expensive at Halftime Beverage, but $2.99 a can, I'm still not going to be mad at that. That's a fine price. And then availability is New Holland. I have no idea. This is where I usually say, if you get New Holland, you should see this one. And shout out to Chaz. I think it is the second time I mentioned Chaz, and maybe recently anyway. He always says, you can't just say that. You can't just say, if you see a certain brewery, you should see this one. And he's right. Because I see Dragon's Milk and Dragon's Milk reserve beers from New Holland. I don't see year-round offerings. I do not see seasonal offerings. So I don't know where this gets distro. Hopefully they have a beer finder on their website. But if you do get New Holland stuff regularly, especially year-round and seasonals, then you probably should see this one. If not, I don't know. I wouldn't say you're missing out if you don't pick this one up, but it's a nice old school pumpkin ale, lower ABV. I could actually drink. I've said this in either day 1 or day 2, as far as pumpkin beers go, the reviews of the 10 Days of Pumpkin, where I said, you know, I'm not somebody who drinks like a ton of pumpkin beers at once. Usually I'm one and done. This and the Narragansett one could be sessionable. Like you could drink 2, 3, 4, maybe even a 6-pack of them over the course of the night, because I don't think it's too much of one thing. Could be wrong though. Like I said, 4.5%, you can't tell alcohol-wise, but like I think this drink's a little bit bigger from the flavor standpoint. So if you've had this one before, post in the comment section. Let me know what you thought about it. I'm sure a lot of you, especially if you're in Michigan or in the Midwest, you probably had New Holland, Ichabod before. Let me know what you think about it. I'm going to shut this one down. Check back tomorrow, day 4. We have Sweet Baby Pumpkin from Duclaw. Excited about that one just because Sweet Baby Sweet Baby series, one of those series that kind of I don't love. And the Sweet Baby Jesus, the iconic beer from them, not one of my favorites. So I'm curious to see how they do with the pumpkin beer. Anyway, I'm shutting this one down. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Until tomorrow, cheers.